Moving on, I would now request our next speaker to please step forward, Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, a visionary, pioneer who co-founded HCL in 1976. A visionary pioneer, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have a round of applause for him? He spearheaded HCL's expansion into Singapore in 1980 and created a successful business spanning China, Hong Kong, and today HCL is valued at an impressive US $50 billion. Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, please, sir.
Good afternoon. I think what I've been seeing is a phenomenal amount of enthusiasm from all of you who are definitely some terrific entrepreneurs out there who have created so many businesses in the country and to make this whole area of realtors very successful. Well, actually, today I would like to talk about my story and how we went about creating a company which is now global. Well, I started my life in a small little town called Jabalpur, and I was the son of an IAS officer. And obviously, my father felt that since he was in the bureaucracy in the government, I would follow suit. But I seriously disappointed him and became an engineer. Having become an engineer, the challenge was how to find a job those days, and I'm talking about the 70s. And those days, jobs were very difficult to get. So unfortunately, it took me 6 months to start to get people to ask me to come for interviews. And I got suddenly 3 interview letters. But I was very clear in my mind that after doing engineering, I didn't want to do engineering work. I wanted to actually be in sales and marketing. So the first thing that you need to always decide in your life is what's your passion? And you need to follow your passion in doing whatever you want to do. So I only applied to sales and marketing jobs, and therefore there were very few of them. And suddenly I got 3 invites to go to Delhi for interviews. And I went to Delhi, stayed with my sister, and appeared for all the 3 interviews and got all the 3 jobs. Now comes the challenge, which job to take. So since I had done electronics, I decided to join a company called DCM Data Products, and that was part of one of India's largest companies those days. And so I took that job and started my life learning about how to sell product in the most hardest way that was possible. So I actually traveled pretty much all over Maharashtra those days, and sometimes on top of trucks to actually sell our product. And therefore, I learned the hard way on how to actually sell product. Having done that, about 3 years later, 6 of us decided that enough is enough. Let's not work for somebody. Let's create a company of our own. So we decided that we would be India's first manufacturing company for making computers in India. And those days, today you hear about all kinds of semiconductors and microprocessors that are there in your phone. But those days, the microprocessor was just making its appearance. So we decided, let's take the microprocessor and change the world. And that's what we did. But those were the days of license Raj. If you wanted to actually start a computer company, you needed a license to make computers. And we were too small. We were a startup. There was nothing called startup those days. There was nothing called venture capitalists or angels those days who could give you money. But anyway, we put together a princely sum of 1.8 lakhs, and among the six of us. And we created the initial company to start looking at marketing some products. And in the meantime, we started to look for how do I get a license to make computers? And it was very tough because government wouldn't give it to small companies like ours. But we suddenly found that the UP government was sitting with a license. We went to them, formed a joint sector undertaking, and called it Hindustan Computers Limited. And the rest is history. 1.86 lakhs that we started with. And today, HCL is a $6 billion corporation working in more than 40 countries all over the world. We employ more than 300,000 people. So, you know, when I look back to those days, what's the learning? What's the learning for anybody? It's not about having resources. It's not about money. It's not about having people. It's all about just one word, aspiration. And if you have the aspiration, you can succeed. So later on, when I went to study for a short program in Michigan, my guru was Dr. C.K. Prahalad, who's one of the world's topmost strategists. And he used to say, A is greater than R. If you have the aspiration, resources will happen. And that's really what the HCL story is all about. We had no resources. We just had a very small amount of money, but we created a corporation of this size. Now, how did we go about doing it? In the initial stages, we designed our own computers, marketed them all over the country, and in 10 years from starting our business, we were the largest computer company in India. And that's really how HCL established itself. And early days of our life, we decided to go global. And you know, you have to have that kind of thinking in the early stages of your creating your business, that you have to have the guts to do big things. If you don't take audacious decisions, you really don't succeed. And that's how we went about doing it. Within 3 years of starting the company, we had actually started to make computers in Singapore. And we actually sold and made computers for the Far East. So, a lot of people don't even know that India could have exported computers in 1980. And then we carried on, and in somewhere around the late 80s, McKinsey came to us, which is a large consulting company, and McKinsey said, you guys have some great technology in terms of your current computers. Why don't you take this to America? And you know, that's like taking coal to Newcastle. But we agreed. We said, looks great. Why don't we go and set up in America? So in Silicon Valley, we went and set up a manufacturing plant for making computers. Not many people know this in the country because everybody talks about global brands coming to India. Nobody really knows that an Indian brand was out there selling in America. So we actually then started the sales, we got business, we started manufacturing, and suddenly we realized that the largest deal that we had done, that company got bought out. And so our deal vanished overnight. And secondly, there were certain technical requirements against which you have to sell in the United States. McKinsey had forgotten to tell us about those. So as a result, what happens is that we just landed up there. We had borrowed money. We were setting up our computer business, and lo and behold, nothing was available. We could not sell. So we had to quickly pivot the business. And this is something that happens in a lot of businesses globally. When something doesn't work, you actually pivot to something which is close to what you were doing. So from the hardware business, we pivoted to marketing and sales of engineering and technical software. And that became successful. So over a period of the next many years, we expanded from our original location in Singapore to all over the Far East. We had offices in different countries. We went to China. And we went to China at a time when China was not developed at all. And so it was so interesting that we would go there and we would actually go through the whole process of selling to the Chinese. And I must tell you, they are great negotiators. Negotiating with the Chinese really teaches you how to negotiate. So, you know, there would be situations where we would go in and meet the Chinese buyer, and 6 of them or 7 of them are sitting on the other side of the table, and just 2 of you sitting this side. And about 2 hours later, they will say, no, they'll go to the board and put a number and say, that's the price I want. And they would just walk out of the room because they knew that we could never get that price. So they just make us wait the whole day, and next day you come back, and then they will again go to the board and put another price and say, that's the price we want. This whole process carried on for 3 days. And they knew that on the 4th day, we had a flight booked to leave. We had no hotel rooms available. So last day, 3 hours before our flight, is when we sat down and really negotiated. And they pushed us to the corner in terms of negotiation. So that's how the Chinese do. Amazing negotiators. One particular incident I still remember. They came one day to me and said, we would like to meet up in your room. So 4 of them landed up in our room in the hotel, and those days there were very few hotels there. And after a while, I suddenly saw one guy get up, go away. Then another guy got up, went away. They all went away, came back, 4 of them. And after the meeting was over, I asked my colleague, why were these guys getting up and going away? And he said, Guy, they were having a shower in your bathroom. Those days, there was no concept of toilets and showers in homes in China. They used to have communal baths. And so, obviously, I ended up changing my room absolutely immediately. So, you know, these are the kind of experiences that you gain as you go global, and you learn how to market and sell into other countries. So over a period of the next 20, 30 years, we grew from India to the Far East, to the United States, to Europe. And we went and bought close to about, to grow, we went and bought about 8 or 10 companies abroad. And that enabled us to grow much, much faster than what we could have grown. And I still remember that you need to be gutsy and audacious in what you want to do. So I don't know how many of you know, I think most of you know a company called Infosys in India, right? Everybody knows Infosys. So one day, me and the chairman of the company, we were visiting Beijing for the Olympics, and we were having a drink in the evening. And suddenly he gets a call, and he says, in the call, he was chatting, and then after the call, he says, we lost it. So I said, what did we lose? He said, we were planning to buy a company in England for 800 million pounds. Unfortunately, Infosys went in and bought that company, and they've announced that they have bought the company, and they had a press conference. So I said, that's a disaster, because that's something that we are banking on to grow our business in Europe. And but he says, watch this space, see what happens in the next 1 or 2 days. So what did we do? We went and outbid Infosys and bought that company. Very few organizations would have the audacity to do things like this, but that's the way companies go. Companies go great. And at a particular stage, when we wanted to go for a listing in India in the stock exchange, we didn't have enough business at that particular time to show to the market that we were sitting with a whole bunch of business in our hand. So we again created something completely unique. You must have heard of employee stock options, right? We created something called the customer stock option. So we went to about 20 of our customers and said, if you give us $75 million worth of orders, we'll give you a part of the company before we go for an IPO. And we got close to 6 customers who signed up for $75 million. And that created HCL. So at that particular time in year 2000, we were oversubscribed 23 times. And it's history that we made at that particular time. So we've had the gumption and the audacity to do things which most companies don't do. And one of the things that we created was an organization which was consisting of the topmost salespeople in the country. If HCL was in any customer account, the competition was very, very scared. And that's how we created a phenomenal sales organization. But how did we go about doing it? We would actually select people based on a process that was created by McClellan in Harvard. This whole process looked at what is it that drives a person. Whether a person is driven by power, whether the person is driven by need for achievement, or a person is driven by need for affiliation. So we would actually give a picture to everybody who came, and they would actually write a story. And based on that story, we would be able to always figure out that the person had need for achievement, or need for affiliation, or need for power. What we were looking for is people with phenomenal need for achievement. And from the story that they wrote, the words that they used, we would be able to analyze whether they had that in them or not. So selecting the right people is absolutely essential. And then training them to be great salespeople is also very critical. And this is something that I'm sure in your professions, this would count a lot, because at the end of the day, when a customer walks in or meets you, you need to make sure that you don't let that customer go away. You need to be able to close the business as fast as possible, and you need to know the process of closing that business. So there is this whole concept of how to sell and how to create that relationship by which you actually can sell. And so about a couple of years ago, I was in Goa, and it was the time of COVID, and that's when I decided that I need to do something about this, what learnings I've had in my life. And so I decided I was one day chatting with my grandson here, and I was living here for about 6 months those days. And my grandson said, every evening I used to tuck him into bed and tell him a story. Can I have some water, please? So what happened at that particular stage is that one day my grandson said, you've been telling me so many stories, some were true, and I don't think some were really true. They were things that you made up probably. And so I said, yes, I did. So at that stage, he said, okay, instead of telling us some other stories, why don't you tell me the story of your life? So I started to tell little anecdotes of what my life had been all about. And then I decided, COVID time, I have nothing much to do, why don't I write a book? And that's how I started to work on creating this particular book, which is pretty much called around what I believe in life, which is aspiration is what it needs for you to create a business. Aspiration drives people, aspiration drives countries, aspiration drives companies. And if you can actually have the aspiration, things happen. So inside this book, I decided that I will write about what makes an entrepreneur successful. How do you actually create a business? How do you actually sell to an organization? So I actually have chapters on entrepreneurship. I have chapters on salesmanship. And I also have some chapters on how to be a good human being. I think it's very important that when you actually create a company, you have all the wealth that you needed to have. How do you actually go about doing something for the country, doing something for the community that's around you, and how do you do it? It's not about writing a check. It's all about giving back genuinely. So I do remember when COVID struck Delhi and Goa, and these are the two cities I live in, both the places I contributed hugely in terms of doing many, many things for the state. And in Goa itself, I gave away a lot of stuff during those days. Oxygen was short, ventilators were short, whole bunch of stuff. And I went to many, many technical companies and got solutions for Goa. So at any particular stage in your life, you need to learn how to give back. And one other thing that I do talk about in my life is all about the whole concept of not just knowing your own subject, but knowing a lot of other areas too. Sure, thank you. So it's not just about, knowing one area. It's all about having a range in life. If you have a range in life, your life becomes much more interesting, and it also enables you to understand so many things that are happening around you. So I call it a T model. T, the length of the T is the depth to which you know your own subject. But the T on top is your range of knowledge you have of other things. And so, very early days of my life, I was very interested in space travel. And in my school and college days, I used to write to NASA. There was no concept of internet. There was no concept of, email. I would write letters to NASA and request them to send me material on their next spaceship they were building. And I remember my room in my home was surrounded by pictures of spacecraft. So I had phenomenal amount of interest in space, and that interest in space has continued from then to now, because I've invested in some startups in India which are actually making satellites. And I've also already sent close to 3 satellites in space. So it makes your life much more interesting, makes your life more meaningful if you have a range of subjects that you can do. For example, I was a shortwave listener. I read a lot. I sort of used to sing in school and college. And when I finished up my career and I sort of took a retirement, of course, my wife says I have still not retired because I work more than when I was in HCL. But when I finished up, I said, I must learn how to sing better. So I actually hired a teacher, and for the last 5 years, I've been learning how to sing better. So I think the whole thing that I'm trying to communicate is that be a rangist, don't get stuck with what you do. Do many other things around you and learn to do these things well also. And today, when I look at where I am after my so-called retirement, which my wife refuses to accept, I do many, many things. First of all, I have been working on a policy for the country for the last 30, 40 years on electronics and semiconductors. And something happened yesterday which made me very, very happy, because the government finally announced semiconductor plants to be set up in India. And I've been waiting for it for close to 40 years for it to happen. But I'm very happy. It's happening. And I'm part of the India Semiconductor Mission. I am an advisor there. And we've been seeing that this thing is going to happen one day. You know, what people don't understand and realize how important semiconductors are for our world. I remember the Senate Intelligence Committee chief in the Senate in America saying something 5-7 years ago, and he made this statement: the next wars will be fought with semiconductors. And that is real. You tell me one product around you that doesn't have a semiconductor. Maybe not this bottle, right? But most of the things around you, anything that you see has semiconductors. So a large country like ours has to have semiconductors. So actually, I'm being part of this journey, working with the government on creating a strategy for making India a product nation. You know, for many years, this country has done a phenomenal job in creating many services industries. We are the world's largest in terms of software. And we created the software industry 30 years ago, and it's a $250 billion industry. We own 30% of the world's market. So India can do things with our own capabilities, which are possible. Now, when I was hearing some of you talk about technology for real estate, I felt that, guys, look around you. India has phenomenal software capability. Utilize it to make your business a whole lot better. The capabilities in this country are absolutely amazing. And 10 years ago, when I used to walk into a drawing room, everybody used to say, why don't we have a Google or a Microsoft in this country? And I would not have an answer. But today, I would like to tell you that there are many little Googles and little Microsofts in this country, and they're close to 15 to 20,000 software product companies in India. You will be surprised to know that a little village in Tamil Nadu houses a $1 billion software company called Zoho. It is headquartered from a village in Tamil Nadu. That's the power of India. That's what we can do with our skills and our capabilities. And so I would absolutely encourage you, all of you in the realtor business, to work together with the software product companies and create some global products in this space. I think it'll be of great value to the whole world and for you. So technology is something that is not going to allow you to grow the normal way. If you look at banks many years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, HDFC was a bank. HDFC is no longer a bank. HDFC is an IT company. Banking is, by the way. Without technology, without being an IT company, HDFC cannot succeed. And that's happened to many areas in the world. So I would very strongly say to all of you in the realty business to embrace technology and learn and use technology by which you can get better and better. You know, today we are a $250 billion software economy. But you know what lies ahead? Artificial intelligence, ChatGPT type of solutions that are being talked about today. Artificial intelligence has been around for 40 years. It's not anything new. But when ChatGPT got announced last year, it changed the whole story. Because suddenly, you had the power of AI in your hand. A lot of you may have not realized that the little phone that you carry, inside that is, if you carry an Apple, you have a Siri. Siri is nothing but AI. And it's an assistant that's helping you to do more and more using voice. But a lot of these technologies that are out there, a lot of times, and somebody said earlier, when a calculator appeared, everybody thought jobs will go away. We started computer business in India. We went to Life Insurance Corporation. There was a strike in Life Insurance Corporation. And they said, "Thou shall not buy computers." And what did we do? We came up with a strategy. We went back to our lab. We rejigged our computer, renamed it, okay? And we called it ALPM, Advanced Ledger Posting Machine. We changed the name, we changed the looks, and we went back to LIC and said, hey, here is a product. And they bought it because the guys in the unions could not understand what we did. So, you know, you have to innovate. You have to come up with ideas and strategies by which you overcome a situation which will face you. So I think this whole situation of artificial intelligence, technology, Chat GPT, all of this is going to, sort of drive you to think what is going to happen next. Okay? And I must tell you, even the software industry today, the 250 billion software industry, $50 billion out of that is under threat because of automation and AI. So there are headwinds for software business also. So it's not that any business, even the technology business, is under threat from technology. Okay, so you don't have to worry that, technology is going to take up jobs. Of course, technology will take over jobs, but new jobs will get created. New areas will open up. New ways of communicating with customers will come up. And I think all realtors need to think, how do I personalize the experience for customers more and more using technology? How do I make doing business easy? How do I make every transaction so easy for my customer that they don't need to spend more time, they need to spend less time deciding? So just imagine if you sell one home in 10 days, using technology are able to sell 2 homes in 3 days. Hey, you can definitely succeed more. So I think this whole idea of using technology and being able to, in a manner, master technology to help you do your business better is really what you should look for. So when I was told by your organizers that there are a lot of concerns among realtors on use of AI and AI threatening your business, I picked up a startup and I asked that gentleman sitting there to come and tell you what AI can do for you. So can you please come up on the stage, Ankush, and tell them what AI can do for them?